These verses address different aspects of wealth, money, contentment, generosity, and the proper attitude toward financial resources. You will find that some verses overlap and warn us repeatedly about certain actions. Old Testament. Genesis chapter 13 verse 2. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. Genesis 28, 20, 22. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth." Exodus 22:25. If you lend money to one of my people, you shall not be like a moneylender to him, and you shall not charge him interest. Next, Leviticus 19:13. You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired servant shall not remain with you all night until the morning. Leviticus chapter 25 verses 35 to 37. Do not take interest or any profit from them, but fear your God so that they may continue to live among you. Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 18. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Deuteronomy chapter 15 verse 10. Give generously to them and do so without a grudging heart. Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 12. The Lord will open the heavens to bless all the work of your hands. Deuteronomy chapter 23 verses 19 to 20. Do not charge a fellow Israelite interest, whether on money or food or anything else. 1 Samuel chapter 2 verse 7. The Lord sends poverty and wealth, He humbles and He exalts. 1 Chronicles chapter 29 verse 12. Wealth and honor come from you, you are the ruler of all things. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 9 to 10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, then your barns will be filled. Proverbs chapter 6 verses 6 to 8. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 4. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 4. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 28. Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 11. Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 23. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Proverbs chapter 15 verse 16. Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil. Proverbs 16 verse 8. Better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice. Proverbs 18 verse 11. The wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it a wall too high to scale. Proverbs 19 verse 17. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and He will reward them for what they have done. Proverbs chapter 21 verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 1. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Proverbs 22 verse 9. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. Proverbs 23 verses 4 to 5. Do not wear yourself out to get rich, do not trust your own cleverness. Proverbs 28 verse 6. Better the poor whose walk is blameless than the rich whose ways are perverse. Proverbs chapter 28 verse 20. A faithful person will be richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished. Proverbs chapter 28 verse 22. The stingy are eager to get rich and are unaware that poverty awaits them. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 10. Whoever loves money never has enough, whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 12. Wisdom is a shelter as money is a shelter, but the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. Isaiah chapter 55 verses 1 to 2. Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Jeremiah chapter 9 verses 23 to 24. Let not the wise boast of their wisdom, or the strong boast of their strength, or the rich boast of their riches. Malachi chapter 3 verse 10. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. To ensure that your finances are in alignment with the foundation of biblical teachings, we have provided the explanation for important financial verses in the Old Testament. Genesis chapter 13 verse 2. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. This verse highlights the material wealth of Abram, later known as Abraham, a central figure in the Bible. Abram's wealth, consisting of livestock, silver, and gold, was significant in his time. In ancient cultures, wealth was often measured by tangible assets like animals, precious metals, and land. Abram's wealth symbolized not only material success but also God's blessing upon him. The verse also sets the stage for Abram's future as a leader and the ancestor of the Israelites, showing that his prosperity played a role in God's covenant with him. However, it's also clear throughout the Bible that wealth alone wasn't the key to Abram's success. It was his faith in God. Genesis chapter 28 verses 20 through 22. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. In this passage, Jacob is responding to a vision he had of God. He promises that if God keeps him safe and provides for him, he will dedicate himself to God. Importantly, Jacob commits to giving back a tenth, a tithe, of everything he receives as a sign of gratitude and devotion. This act of tithing is one of the earliest examples in the Bible and reflects the principle of giving back a portion of one's blessings to God. The passage reminds us of the importance of trusting God to provide for our needs and acknowledging Him through generosity and commitment to worship. Exodus chapter 22 verse 25. If you lend money to one of my people, you shall not be like a moneylender to him, and you shall not charge him interest. This verse is part of the laws God gave to the Israelites through Moses. It teaches about fairness and compassion in lending practices. In the ancient world, it was common for people to fall into debt, but God commands that His people should not exploit one another in times of need. When lending to fellow Israelites, they were forbidden to charge interest, ensuring that financial help was a means of support, not a way to profit. This principle emphasizes the importance of kindness, mercy, and a sense of community responsibility, especially toward those who are vulnerable or in need. Leviticus chapter 19 verse 13. You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired servant shall not remain with you all night until the morning. This verse focuses on the fair treatment of workers and neighbors. It teaches that oppressing or taking advantage of others, whether through theft or withholding what is rightfully theirs, is wrong. Specifically, the verse warns against delaying payment to hired workers. In ancient times, laborers often relied on daily wages for their immediate survival, so holding back payment could cause severe hardship. The verse underscores the biblical principle of fairness, honesty, and timely action, showing that ethical conduct in financial dealings is central to a life that honors God and respects others. Leviticus chapter 25, verses 35 to 37. Do not take interest or any profit from them, but fear your God, so that they may continue to live among you. Here God instructs the Israelites on how to care for those in financial distress. If someone among them becomes poor, they are to help that person without taking advantage of their misfortune. Specifically, charging interest on a loan to a poor person is forbidden. This command shows God's concern for social justice and compassion. Instead of seeing someone's hardship as an opportunity to profit, the Israelites are called to act generously and help preserve the dignity and well-being of their fellow community members. The underlying message is that wealth and power should not be used to exploit the vulnerable, but to lift them up. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. This verse reminds the Israelites that any wealth they accumulate comes from God. While it's easy to take credit for personal success, the Bible emphasizes that it is God who gives the strength, skill, and opportunities needed to prosper. In this way, the verse calls for humility and gratitude, urging people not to forget God in their prosperity. The Israelites are reminded to acknowledge God's role in their success and to use their wealth responsibly in accordance with His commands. This passage serves as a warning against pride and self-sufficiency, highlighting the importance of recognizing God as the true source of all blessings. Deuteronomy 15:10-15. Give generously to them and do so without a grudging heart. In this verse, God encourages His people to be generous toward those in need. Giving is not just about the act itself, but about the attitude with which it is done. God desires that we give freely and without reluctance or resentment. The principle here is that generosity should come from a place of genuine love and compassion, not out of obligation or self-interest. This verse shows that our hearts matter as much as our actions. It reminds us that God blesses those who give with a willing and joyful spirit, reflecting His own generosity toward us. Deuteronomy 28:12. The Lord will open the heavens, His abundant storehouse, to send rain on your land in season, and to bless all the work of your hands. You will lend to many nations, but borrow from none, to bless all the work of your hands. This verse is part of the blessings God promises to the Israelites if they obey His commandments. It reassures them that God will provide abundantly for their needs, ensuring prosperity in the work they do. The phrase, bless all the work of your hands, means that God will make their efforts fruitful, whether in farming, business, or any other labor. It highlights that hard work combined with obedience to God leads to success and well-being. The verse also reflects the idea that blessings come not just from human effort, but from God's favor and provision. Deuteronomy 23:19. Do not charge a fellow Israelite interest, whether on money or food or anything else. This command underscores the principle of fairness and kindness in financial relationships among the Israelites. God instructs them not to charge interest on loans to fellow Israelites, whether the loan is in the form of money or goods. This law was intended to prevent exploitation and foster a sense of community and mutual care. It's a reminder that helping those in need should not be about gaining profit, but about maintaining fairness and compassion. Charging interest, especially to someone struggling, would only increase their burden, whereas God's law promotes generosity and fairness in financial matters. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 15. Pay them their wages each day before sunset, because they are poor and are counting on it. This verse is about treating workers fairly, especially those who depend on daily wages to survive. In ancient times, many people lived day to day and relied on being paid immediately after working. God commands employers to pay their workers on time without delay because withholding wages could cause the worker and their family to suffer. This shows the importance of fairness and compassion in business and employment. It reminds us to be mindful of the needs of others especially those who are economically vulnerable, and to avoid exploiting their dependency. Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. Keep this book of the law always on your lips, meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. In this verse, God tells Joshua that true prosperity comes from obeying his word. By constantly studying and meditating on the scriptures, Joshua will know how to live a life that pleases God. This promise is not just about material wealth, but also about success in life through obedience to God's laws. God's definition of prosperity includes spiritual well-being, healthy relationships, and wisdom, not just money. This teaches that success and prosperity come from aligning one's life with God's teachings and values, trusting Him to provide all that is needed. Judges chapter 17, verse 10. Then Micah said to him, "Live with me and be my father and priest, and I'll give you 10 shekels of silver a year, your clothes, and your food." In this passage, Micah offers to hire a Levite to serve as his personal priest. The offer includes a set salary, clothing, and food, reflecting a type of employment agreement. This arrangement is unusual because priests typically served the entire community, not individual households. The verse reflects the importance of religious and spiritual services, which Micah tries to secure for his own household. However, the story that follows shows that mixing faith with financial transactions in this way can lead to improper worship. It reminds us to be careful not to commercialize spiritual services and to maintain a pure heart in matters of faith. 1 Samuel 2, 7. The Lord sends poverty and wealth, He humbles and He exalts. This verse recognizes that both wealth and poverty ultimately come from God. It speaks to the sovereignty of God over all circumstances in life. He is in control of our material and social standing. God can lift people up or bring them down according to His will and purpose. This teaches us humility and trust, knowing that success or hardship in life is part of God's larger plan. It also encourages us not to place too much importance on wealth, as it can be fleeting and is subject to God's control. Instead, we should focus on faithfulness and trust in God's provision. 1 Samuel 16, 7. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. This verse is part of the story where God chooses David, the youngest son of Jesse, to be king over Israel. While others might have expected a strong, impressive-looking leader, God emphasizes that He values the heart and character over outward appearances. In the context of wealth, this reminds us that God's judgment is not based on how much money or status a person has, but on their inner qualities like faith, integrity, and love. It's a reminder that wealth and external success do not define a person's worth in God's eyes. He cares more about who we are inside. First Kings chapter 3, verse 13. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. This verse is part of God's response to King Solomon's request for wisdom. Solomon asked for wisdom to lead the people of Israel, and God was so pleased with this selfless request that He promised to give Solomon not only wisdom, but also wealth and honor. The verse teaches that when we prioritize the right things like wisdom, integrity, and service to others, God may bless us with even more than we ask for, including material wealth. However, it also shows that wealth should not be our primary goal. Instead, we should seek wisdom and a heart that aligns with God's will. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 7. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." This story is about a widow who was in debt and about to lose her sons to slavery. She asked Elisha, a prophet, for help, and God miraculously provided oil that she could sell to pay her debts. The verse illustrates God's concern for those in financial distress and His ability to provide in unexpected ways. It also highlights the principle of good stewardship. Once the immediate debt is paid, the woman is instructed to use the remaining resources to sustain her family. This teaches us about trusting God in times of need and managing the resources He provides wisely. Second Kings chapter 12 verse 15. They did not require an accounting from those to whom they gave the money to pay the workers, because they acted with complete honesty. This verse describes the rebuilding of the temple under King Joash. The people in charge of paying the workers were trusted because they were known to be honest. No one had to double-check the finances because everyone involved acted with integrity. The message here is about the importance of honesty in financial dealings. When people act with integrity, there is no need for excessive oversight, and trust is built. It shows how trustworthiness in financial matters reflects a person's character and can create an efficient, effective system of work and management. First Chronicles chapter 29 verse 12. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. This verse comes from a prayer by King David, acknowledging that all wealth and honor ultimately come from God. David recognizes that God is the source of all prosperity, power, and success, and he is grateful for the blessings that have allowed him to build the temple. This verse reminds us that no matter how hard we work or how much we achieve, it is God who grants us the ability to succeed. It encourages humility and gratitude, as everything we have is a gift from God. Our wealth and honor should be used to glorify Him and fulfill His purposes. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 1. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. This verse teaches that a good reputation, being known for integrity, honesty, and kindness, is more valuable than wealth. While silver and gold may provide temporary comfort, a person's character and how they are perceived by others will last much longer. Having a good name opens doors and brings respect, trust, and honor. The verse encourages us to prioritize building a good character and reputation over the pursuit of material wealth. It reminds us that money can come and go, but the way we treat others and the legacy we leave through our actions is far more important. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. This verse speaks about the power dynamics between wealth and poverty. It highlights the fact that those with wealth often have more influence and control over those who are poor. Additionally, it warns about the dangers of debt. When a person borrows money, they become obligated to repay it, and in a sense, they lose some of their freedom. The verse cautions against accumulating debt and encourages people to live within their means to avoid becoming trapped by financial obligations. It teaches the importance of financial independence and the potential consequences of borrowing. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 9. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. This verse highlights the blessing that comes from being generous. Those who are willing to share what they have with the poor will experience blessings in their own lives. The act of giving to those in need not only helps the recipient but also brings joy and fulfillment to the giver. This is a principle seen throughout Scripture. God blesses those who are generous and kind. The verse encourages us to cultivate a spirit of generosity, knowing that it leads to greater blessings both spiritually and materially, as God takes care of those who care for others. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 16. Whoever oppresses the poor for their own increase, and whoever gives to the rich, both come to poverty. This verse warns against two common mistakes: exploiting the poor to gain wealth, and giving to the rich in hopes of gaining favor or advantage. Both actions are rooted in selfishness and a desire for personal gain, but the verse warns that such behavior will ultimately lead to poverty. Oppressing the poor is unjust, and seeking to buy influence with the rich is unwise. The verse teaches that exploiting others, whether poor or rich, will backfire in the end. It encourages fairness, generosity, and integrity in financial dealings, rather than selfishness and greed. Proverbs 23 verses 4-5. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. This verse warns against obsessively pursuing wealth to the point of exhaustion. It reminds us that riches are fleeting and unreliable. No matter how much effort we put into gaining wealth, money can disappear quickly, whether through bad investments, theft, or other unexpected events. The verse also cautions against relying on one's own cleverness or strategies to get rich. Instead, it encourages a balanced approach to life where financial gain is not the sole focus. The message is to work diligently, but not to the point of being consumed by the desire for wealth, as it can quickly vanish. Proverbs 28 verse 6, "Better the poor whose walk is blameless than the rich whose ways are perverse." This verse teaches that it is better to be poor and live a life of integrity than to be rich, but live in a corrupt or immoral way. A person's character and how they live their life are more important than their financial status. Being wealthy does not make someone better or more successful if their actions are dishonest or unjust. The verse encourages us to prioritize righteousness and integrity, even if it means having less materially. It reminds us that in God's eyes, a blameless life is far more valuable than riches gained through sinful behavior. Proverbs 28 verse 8. "Whoever increases wealth by taking interest or profit from the poor amasses it for another who will be kind to the poor." This verse warns against exploiting the poor through unfair practices like charging excessive interest or profiting from their hardship. Such wealth, gained through unjust means, will not last and will ultimately end up in the hands of someone else who will use it more generously. The verse teaches that exploiting the poor is not only morally wrong, but also short-sighted, because God will ensure that such wealth is redistributed to those who will use it rightly. It calls for fairness and kindness in financial dealings, particularly when dealing with those who are vulnerable. Proverbs chapter 28 verse 20. "A faithful person will be richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished." This verse contrasts the blessings that come from faithfulness and integrity with the consequences of greed. A person who is faithful, honest, and diligent in their work and life will experience blessings, both spiritual and material. These blessings come as a result of steady, honorable living. On the other hand, someone who is driven by a desire to get rich quickly, without concern for ethics or honesty, will eventually face negative consequences. The verse teaches that seeking wealth for its own sake, especially through dishonest or reckless means, leads to punishment or downfall. It encourages patience, faithfulness, and integrity as the path to true blessing, rather than chasing after quick riches at the cost of moral values. Proverbs chapter 28 verse 22. "The stingy are eager to get rich and are unaware that poverty awaits them." This verse warns against greed and stinginess. People who are overly focused on accumulating wealth and are unwilling to share or help others may think they are on the path to riches, but in reality, they are headed toward poverty. Their selfishness blinds them to the fact that generosity is often the key to lasting success and prosperity. The verse teaches that hoarding wealth out of fear or greed leads to a lack of true fulfillment and security. It encourages generosity and warns that being miserly can result in losing the very wealth one is trying so hard to keep. Proverbs chapter 28 verse 25. "The greedy stir up conflict, but those who trust in the Lord will prosper." This verse points out that greed often leads to conflict and strife. People who are greedy will cause problems in their relationships, whether in business, family, or community, because they put their own desires above the well-being of others. In contrast, those who trust in God and rely on Him for their needs will find that they prosper. Prosperity here is not just about material wealth, but also about peace, well-being, and contentment. The verse teaches that trusting in God, rather than being consumed by greed, leads to a more fulfilling and harmonious life. Proverbs chapter 30 verses 7-9. "Two things I ask of you, Lord, do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, 'Who is the Lord?' Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God." This passage reflects a prayer for balance in life. The speaker asks God for two things: to be kept from lying and deception, and to have just enough, not too much or too little. The concern is that having too much wealth might lead to pride, arrogance, and a sense of self-sufficiency that causes one to forget about God. On the other hand, extreme poverty might lead to desperation, which could result in stealing or dishonorable behavior. The prayer expresses a desire for contentment with just enough to meet daily needs, trusting that God will provide. It teaches the wisdom of seeking a balanced life, free from extremes and depending on God for sustenance. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 10. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. This verse speaks to the insatiable nature of greed. People who are obsessed with money or wealth will never feel like they have enough, no matter how much they acquire. The pursuit of wealth for its own sake leads to a never-ending cycle of dissatisfaction. The verse calls this mindset meaningless because it highlights the futility of trying to find fulfillment or happiness in material possessions. It teaches that money, while useful, cannot bring lasting satisfaction or contentment. True fulfillment comes from things that go beyond wealth, such as relationships, purpose, and spiritual connection. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 19. Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions, and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God. This verse acknowledges that wealth and possessions are gifts from God, but it also emphasizes that the ability to enjoy them is just as important. It's not just about having wealth, but having the mindset to appreciate and find contentment in what you have. God grants both the material resources and the heart to be content and joyful with them. The verse teaches that happiness does not come merely from wealth itself, but from a sense of satisfaction and gratitude for what one has. It encourages us to recognize both our material blessings and the importance of a content heart as gifts from God. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 12. Wisdom is a shelter as money is a shelter, but the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. This verse compares wisdom and money, noting that both can provide a form of protection or security. However, it points out that wisdom has a greater benefit than money because it can preserve life and guide a person to make better decisions. Money can provide temporary shelter or protection, but it does not offer the long-term benefits that wisdom does. Wisdom helps a person navigate life's challenges more effectively, leading to lasting well-being. The verse encourages us to seek wisdom, recognizing that it offers a deeper, more enduring kind of security than money alone can provide. Isaiah chapter 55 verses 1-2. Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare. This passage is an invitation to receive the spiritual blessings that God offers, which are available to everyone, regardless of financial status. The imagery of water, wine, and milk represents sustenance and satisfaction, which God offers freely to those who seek Him. The question in the second verse asks why people waste their money and effort on things that do not truly satisfy. The message is that true satisfaction and fulfillment come from God, not from material possessions or worldly pursuits. It teaches that spiritual nourishment is far more valuable than anything money can buy and is freely available to those who turn to God. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 11. Like a partridge that hatches eggs it did not lay are those who gain riches by unjust means. When their lives are half gone, their riches will desert them, and in the end, they will prove to be fools. This verse uses the metaphor of a partridge hatching eggs that don't belong to it to describe people who accumulate wealth through dishonest or unethical means. Just as the partridge does not benefit from the stolen eggs, people who acquire wealth unjustly will eventually lose it. The verse warns that ill-gotten gains will not last, and those who rely on such wealth will ultimately be seen as fools. It teaches that wealth gained dishonestly will not bring lasting security or happiness. and it encourages people to earn money through honest, ethical work. Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 13. Woe to him who builds his palace by unrighteousness, his upper rooms by injustice, making his own people work for nothing, not paying them for their labor. This verse condemns those who gain wealth and build their homes through exploitation and injustice. Specifically, it criticizes people who withhold fair wages from workers, forcing them to work without proper compensation. The woe is a warning of impending judgment or consequences for such behavior. The verse teaches that exploiting others, especially by not paying them fairly for their labor, is not only unethical, but also invites God's judgment. It calls for fairness and justice in how we treat others, especially when it comes to financial dealings and employment practices. Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 19. They will throw their silver into the streets, and their gold will be treated as a thing unclean. Their silver and gold will not be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath. It will not satisfy their hunger or fill their stomachs, for it has caused them to stumble into sin. This verse speaks about the futility of relying on wealth in times of judgment or crisis. In the day of the Lord's wrath, material possessions like silver and gold will be worthless. They cannot provide the security or deliverance that people often expect from them. The verse also highlights how the pursuit of wealth can lead people into sin, causing them to prioritize money over righteousness. It teaches that wealth is powerless to save or provide true security, especially in spiritual matters, and that relying on money instead of God is a dangerous mistake. Haggai chapter 2, verse 8. The silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty. This verse reminds us that all wealth ultimately belongs to God. Silver, gold, and all material possessions are under God's control and authority. While people may accumulate wealth, it is important to remember that everything comes from God and should be used according to His purposes. The verse teaches humility and stewardship, encouraging us to recognize that we are merely caretakers of the resources God has entrusted to us. It reminds us not to be possessive or prideful about wealth, but to use it in ways that honor God's ownership and sovereignty over all things. 2 Chronicles verse 1:11. This verse is God's promise to Solomon, who had asked for wisdom to govern Israel. In addition to granting him wisdom, God promises to give Solomon wealth, possessions, and honor, far surpassing any other king. The verse shows that when we seek wisdom and prioritize serving others, material blessings may follow. However, it's clear that Solomon's wealth was a result of his request for wisdom, not the other way around. The verse teaches that wisdom should be valued above riches, and that God often blesses those who seek His guidance and put His will first in their lives. Job 1:21. Naked. I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Explanation. Job, after losing all his wealth and children in a series of tragic events, speaks these words to express his faith and acceptance of God's will. Job recognizes that everything he had was given by God, and it is within God's right to take it away. This verse reminds us that wealth and possessions are temporary, and we cannot take them with us when we die. It also teaches the importance of trusting God in both prosperity and hardship, praising Him regardless of our circumstances. Job's faith shows that true contentment and peace come from God, not material wealth. Psalm 24:1. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Explanation. This verse declares that everything in the world belongs to God. He is the creator and ruler of all things, including the earth and its inhabitants. In terms of wealth, this reminds us that everything we have is on loan from God. We are stewards of His creation and the resources we possess. This verse encourages humility, reminding us that we don't truly own anything. Instead, we should use the resources we are entrusted with in ways that honor God. It challenges us to recognize God's sovereignty over all things and to act with responsibility in how we manage what we have. Psalm 37:16-17. Better the little that the righteous have than the wealth of many wicked, For the power of the wicked will be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. Explanation. This verse highlights the value of righteousness over material wealth. It suggests that it is better to have little and live rightly than to have great wealth obtained through wickedness. The wealth of those who live without regard for God's principles will not last, and eventually, their power will fade. However, those who live righteously are supported and sustained by God, even if they have less material wealth. The message here is that integrity, faith, and a right relationship with God are worth more than money. It encourages contentment with what we have when we live according to God's ways. Psalm 49:10. For all can see that the wise die, that the foolish and the senseless also perish, leaving their wealth to others. This verse reflects on the fleeting nature of wealth and the inevitability of death. Whether a person is wise or foolish, everyone will eventually die, and when they do, they leave their wealth behind. It is a reminder that no matter how much wealth someone accumulates during their lifetime, they cannot take it with them when they die. The verse encourages a perspective that sees wealth as temporary and not the ultimate goal of life. It suggests that focusing too much on accumulating material things is senseless because they will ultimately be left behind for others to inherit. Psalm 62:10. Though your riches increase, do not set your heart on them. This verse advises against placing too much importance on wealth, even if it grows. It's not necessarily wrong to have wealth, but the warning is about the heart's attitude toward it. If a person becomes overly attached to their riches, it can lead them away from trusting in God. Wealth can be a tool for good, but when it becomes the center of our lives, it can lead to greed, pride, and a sense of self-reliance that distances us from God. The verse teaches that while we may have riches, we should not love or depend on them more than we depend on God. Psalm 112:3. Wealth and riches are in their houses, and their righteousness endures forever. This verse describes the blessings of a righteous person. While they may have material wealth and success, the key to their lasting legacy is their righteousness. The verse shows that true riches are not just material but are found in a life lived in obedience to God. The material wealth of the righteous may be a reflection of God's blessings, but it is their righteousness, how they live according to God's will, that endures forever. This teaches that character and faithfulness to God are more lasting and valuable than any wealth we might acquire in this life. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 9 to 10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops, then your barns will be filled to overflowing and your vats will brim over with new wine. This passage encourages people to honor God with their wealth, particularly by giving the first portion, the first fruits, of what they earn or harvest. The idea is that when we prioritize giving to God first, He will bless us in return. In an agricultural society, the first fruits were the best and earliest parts of the harvest, and giving them to God was a way to acknowledge that everything ultimately comes from Him. The promise here is that when we are generous and put God first in our finances, He will provide for us abundantly. It's a call to trust God with our resources and to give generously, knowing that God will take care of us. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 2. Ill-gotten treasures have no lasting value, but righteousness delivers from death. This verse contrasts dishonest wealth with the lasting value of righteousness. Wealth that is gained through immoral or dishonest means may seem profitable at first, but it will not bring lasting satisfaction or security. Such wealth is temporary and can lead to trouble. In contrast, living righteously, honoring God and treating others fairly, leads to a life that is blessed and protected by God. This verse warns against unethical behavior in the pursuit of wealth, emphasizing that integrity and moral living are far more valuable than money gained through dishonest methods. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 22. The blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil for it. This verse teaches that true wealth comes from God's blessing, not just from hard work or striving. When God blesses someone, they may experience prosperity, but without the stress, worry, or hardships often associated with the relentless pursuit of wealth. It's a reminder that while hard work is important, it is ultimately God who provides for our needs and grants us success. This verse encourages us to seek God's favor and trust in His provision, rather than relying solely on our own efforts or resorting to unethical means to gain wealth. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1. The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with Him. In this verse, dishonest scales refer to cheating in business transactions where merchants would use faulty measurements to deceive customers. God condemns such dishonesty and demands fairness in all dealings. Accurate weights represent honesty and integrity in trade and financial matters. The verse emphasizes that God values truthfulness and fairness, especially in financial dealings, and He blesses those who conduct their business with integrity. It's a warning against using deceit to gain financial advantage, and a call to uphold ethical standards in all transactions. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 4. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. This verse contrasts the temporary value of wealth with the eternal value of righteousness. On the day of wrath, a reference to judgment or times of severe difficulty, money cannot save a person. When it comes to facing God's judgment, wealth is of no use. However, righteousness, living in obedience to God, can deliver a person from spiritual death. The verse reminds us not to put our trust in wealth, which is temporary and powerless in the face of eternal matters. Instead, we should focus on living a life that pleases God, as righteousness holds far greater value in the long run. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 28. Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. This verse warns against placing trust in wealth. People who rely on their riches as their source of security and identity will eventually fall, as wealth is uncertain and can be lost. In contrast, those who live righteously, trusting in God rather than their wealth, will thrive, just like a healthy green plant. This teaches us that it is not wealth that brings lasting success or well-being, but living in accordance with God's principles. It's a call to shift our trust from material possessions to God, who sustains us and enables us to flourish in all circumstances. Proverbs 13:11. Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. This verse emphasizes the value of honest, steady work over getting rich quickly through dishonest means. Money gained through deceit or unethical practices will eventually disappear, either through misfortune or by leading to ruin. However, those who accumulate wealth gradually through honest, hard work will see their savings grow over time. The verse teaches patience and integrity in financial matters. It encourages us to avoid the temptation of shortcuts or unethical schemes to gain wealth, and instead focus on diligent work and careful stewardship of resources. Proverbs 14:23. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. This verse highlights the importance of action over empty words. Simply talking about plans, success, or wealth will not lead to prosperity. It is through diligent effort and hard work that one achieves results. In contrast, those who spend their time talking without putting in the necessary work will face poverty. The verse teaches the value of industriousness and commitment to productive activity. It encourages us to follow through with effort and discipline, reminding us that success requires more than just good intentions. It requires consistent hard work. Proverbs 15:16. Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil. This verse contrasts two lifestyles, one where a person has little but lives with reverence for God, and another where someone has great wealth but lives in constant stress, conflict, or chaos. True peace and contentment come from a right relationship with God, not from accumulating possessions. Having wealth can often lead to anxiety, greed, and problems if it becomes the central focus of life. The verse reminds us that spiritual well-being and peace with God are more valuable than any amount of money or material gain, and it's wise to prioritize that over wealth. Proverbs chapter 16 verse 8. Better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice. This verse emphasizes the importance of integrity over financial success. It is far better to have only a little and live righteously than to accumulate wealth through unjust means. Wealth gained dishonestly or through exploiting others brings no real satisfaction and can lead to consequences later. On the other hand, even a small income earned through honest work brings peace and blessing. The message encourages us to value righteousness and fairness over getting rich, showing that what matters most is how wealth is earned and the character of the person earning it. Proverbs 17:16. Of what use is money in the hand of a fool, since he has no desire to get wisdom? This verse points out the futility of a fool having money. A fool, in this context, refers to someone who lacks wisdom and refuses to seek it. If someone does not have wisdom or a desire to live rightly, their wealth will not benefit them in a meaningful way. The money may be wasted or used poorly, leading to harm rather than good. The verse suggests that wisdom is more important than wealth because it guides a person in how to use resources effectively. It teaches us that the pursuit of wisdom should come before the pursuit of riches, as wisdom helps us manage wealth well. Proverbs 19:1. Better the poor whose walk is blameless than a fool whose lips are perverse. This verse compares two types of people: someone who is poor but lives with integrity, and someone who may have wealth but speaks or acts in a corrupt, dishonest, or immoral way. The verse teaches that it is far better to be poor and live righteously than to be rich but live foolishly or immorally. It reminds us that moral character is more important than financial success. A blameless life, even in poverty, brings honor and peace, while foolishness and corruption lead to downfall, no matter how much wealth one may possess. Proverbs 19:17. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them for what they have done. This verse highlights the importance of being generous and kind to those in need. When we give to the poor, it is as if we are lending to God Himself, and God promises to repay that kindness. This is a powerful reminder that God values compassion and generosity, and He will reward those who help others, whether in this life or the next. It encourages us to share what we have with those who are less fortunate, trusting that God sees our acts of kindness and will bless us for our generosity. The verse shows that helping the poor is an important part of living out our faith. Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. This verse contrasts two approaches to life and work: diligence and haste. Diligence involves careful planning, hard work, and persistence, which leads to success and financial stability. In contrast, acting hastily, without planning or thought, often leads to mistakes and financial loss. The verse encourages us to be thoughtful and patient in our efforts, taking the time to plan wisely and work steadily toward our goals. It teaches the importance of consistency and effort in achieving success, rather than rushing through things or seeking shortcuts that can result in failure. Here is a prayer for financial wealth, good health, and overall well-being. Pray this prayer daily for the best results. Heavenly Father, I come before you today with a humble heart, thanking you for all that is. I am seeking your guidance and blessings. You are the source of all provision and the giver of every good gift. I thank you for all that you have provided in my life, and I trust in your wisdom and care for my future. Lord, I ask for your blessing over my finances. Help me to manage what I have with wisdom and integrity and provide me with opportunities to grow in abundance. I pray that you open doors for prosperity and wealth, not for selfish gain, but so that I may be a blessing to others and use what I receive for good. Help me to trust you in times of need and to always remember that you are my ultimate provider. I also ask for good health, for myself, my family, and all those I love. Please strengthen my body, mind, and spirit, and protect me from illness and harm. Restore any areas of my life that are unwell, and guide me toward a lifestyle that promotes health and wellness. Grant me peace and strength to face each day with joy and confidence. Lastly, Lord, I pray for my overall well-being. Fill me with your peace, love, and wisdom. Guide me to make decisions that align with your will, and help me to find balance in every aspect of my life. May I live in harmony with others, experiencing contentment and fulfillment in all that I do. Thank you, Lord, for hearing my prayer. I trust you, knowing you care for me and will provide for all my needs. May your blessings flow abundantly in my life, and may I always be grateful for your grace and mercy. I pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.